Then there's also, authenticity in our relationships, which is incredibly important. Right now, I'm running a group, and we're exploring self-love and exploring the process of self-love, how we can align with and create more love in our lives. And so we're talking a lot about relationships. And what's most important about relationships and our quality of our relationships, the health of our relationships, the state of our relationships, is dependent upon our ability to show up authentically, right? The more authentic, the more we allow ourselves to be ourselves, the more we give ourselves the permission to be whole, right? Where our fulfillment, our contentment, how we feel emotionally isn't dependent on any other person, place, or thing. That we really have fostered that fulfillment inside of ourselves, right? So we are allowing ourselves the permission to be whole. We're not rejecting parts of ourselves. We're not judging parts of ourselves. That we can actually show up in our relationships more whole. And it is in that wholeness that the quality of that relationship, the health of our relationships are so much better. I don't know about you, but if you think about the relationships in your life, you know the people who feel safe for you, right? You know the people who you can call and express the most embarrassing moments. I have to tell you, I mean, I've definitely had some pretty embarrassing moments, and you can be sitting there in your own shame and embarrassment by yourself, right? But that's when having support is really important, because if you have that trusted confidant that you can go to and you can express, what happened, because that you're going to be supported. You're not going to be shamed. You're not going to be criticized, right? If you think about that relationship, how safe it feels, how it holds you, right? How it gives you the opportunity for you to show up as your whole self. Like, really feel what that feels like. That's really special. It feels so special, right? That quality, that health, that state, right, of quality in that relationship is because you can show up as your whole self. So authenticity is incredibly important when it comes to our relationships. And most importantly, in our intimate relationships and our relationships with our romantic partners. It's incredibly important for us to be showing up authentically. So one of the conversations, we've had in this group is around the ways of which we go into, like, how many of you are struggling with have struggled in the past with online dating, or maybe you're struggling with it now. Maybe some of you have turned the apps off because COVID. I get it. But, it's, as we're moving into exploring relationships, so often it's like, okay, I gotta, you get super done up. You gotta put your best foot forward, right? There's ways which you're operating in conversation and, acting a certain way because you gotta present yourself a certain, and all of that is a recipe for disaster. It's so important that if what you want is truly love and belonging, is truly a relationship with another person, it's the best foot forward would be to show up as your regular, normal, full, authentic self. Okay, I get the wanting to feel good, so do what you need to do to feel good, but don't go to this extreme of trying to act a certain way, right? And even in conversations, so often it can feel awkward, right? Those initial conversations can feel awkward. But I would ask you, does it feel awkward because you are showing up inauthentically? Or have you come being as authentic as you are? Because I will say, for my own experiences, when I allow myself my wholeness and my authentic expression in meeting people, I feel lighter. I'm not so worried about how I'm operating. I let myself talk freely. I ask questions. I'm not trying to operate some sort of way or tread caution. I just allow myself to be myself. It's so much more easier to make a connection with other people and to understand, right, if the connection that you're making with the other person is a good connection when you're showing up authentically. So authenticity is so important in building our relationships. Then the next thing I want to talk about is, how to live authentically in alignment with yourself, right? How you allow yourself wholeness. And the first step I would say is in really writing your wrongs. Like, what are the ways that you have, like, what things about yourself are you criticizing? What parts of yourself do you feel are inadequate or not worthy? And how can you embrace those aspects of yourself? I'll tell you another story here. I was in a relationship with someone that had a lot of incongruencies to it. And I came out of that relationship really feeling like I wasn't worthy. That I wasn't good enough for this relationship, and it was really, really painful and really hard. And then I realized this feeling that I was feeling, that I was like, this isn't me. Like, this isn't me. And I had to explore the feelings of not enoughness. I had to explore that not enough story that I was carrying inside of myself. And what that brought me to was in recognizing or coming to understand that I am enough. I am enough. You are enough. We are enough. The feelings of unworthiness are out of alignment. If feeling that way, it's about figuring out, where did that story come from? Because it's not the truth of who you are right now in this moment. And in uncovering that truth for myself, I had this question of, well, what was I attracted to in this other person? What was attractive about them? Because I realized I don't want to create a situation where I feel this way, because there was something reflected back to me that was making me feel like I was unworthy. So I pulled out a piece of paper and I started to make a list of all these things that I was attracted to in this other person. And I sat there and I looked at this list and I was like, what is it? Right? Like, these are things, some of them good qualities, a lot of them qualities that I was like, that's just not me. And then I realized that I am not embracing any of these qualities myself. Even the good qualities were rooted in my not enough story, right? Those good qualities were things that I didn't feel like I was good enough for, or I didn't have, or I wasn't allowed, right, to be. And so in looking at this list of aspects, I realized, well, these are things that I have rejected, disowned about myself. And as I sat with that list, 3 questions came to mind in order to integrate these aspects, in order to give myself permission to stop rejecting and disowning these parts of myself. Because by having this split, right, having a split, pushing these things away from me, is really impeding my ability to be whole. is really creating this way of being of which I wasn't being authentic, where I was really living my life with so much fear. And the three things that I asked for each one of these aspects were, what is the belief system that I have about this? What's the origin story? Like, why is this on this list? What do I actually think about it? The second question is, what new belief do I need to make about this, right? Like, how can I change the old belief into one that helps me embrace this rather than rejecting it? And then the third one was, what action can I take, right? So I can live this aspect, or I can embody this aspect so that I'm not rejecting it from myself anymore. And it was incredibly healing. It was the start of a very deep healing process for me, because that is the process of getting really honest with yourself. When I asked that question on my page, what does authenticity mean to you? Somebody put, I think it was Sophia wrote, she said that authenticity was getting really honest with yourself about yourself. It's the process of getting honest with yourself about yourself. When you do that, it's about looking at these things, right, that you've held judgment against yourself, that you've criticized about yourself, that you've rejected, disowned from yourself, and righting those wrongs, right? You see those things as wrong and making them right. That is the starting point of uncovering your authentic self. Then it's telling your truth. Telling your truth. So much about telling our truth is how we live our boundaries. Another word that is hugely trending is the word about boundaries. And it seems so frightening for most people. You talk about boundaries like, what? It's like a deer in headlight. What? Boundaries? What are you talking about? Right? Because so many of us struggle with boundaries. Why do we struggle so much with boundaries? Boundaries are simply about expressing your feelings, your emotions, how you are feeling in the moment, and giving voice to that, right? That doesn't feel good. This was done. It made me feel this way. I love Brene Brown's, the story that I'm telling myself is, right? Getting really honest about how you're feeling, what your emotions are, so you can have a conversation that says, hey, that's a boundary for me. That doesn't feel good, right? It's about being able to speak our truth. That is another part of embracing our authenticity. And I think so much about, relationships. In me as a, I call myself now definitely a recovering codependent. And I hate that word. I hate that word codependency, because it's so manipulated into this term, right? That we should be shameful of. And these are all just labels to help us have deeper understanding, but they are not who we are, right? Being a recovering codependent is not a label that I carry. I simply say that around to understand or to create meaning, right? To help understanding around what it is I'm talking about. And it's understanding that, I have these aspects that have been people-pleasing, right? So in people-pleasing, I disown certain aspects of myself, or I don't express certain aspects of myself, or I hide certain truths about myself to make other people more comfortable. But that is denying myself my own authenticity. And so coming into the space of being free in expressing who I am, right? And giving myself the freedom of that expression has been so transformational in being able to express my truth. It's being able to be in a relationship with someone, right? That when things aren't working, I'm not holding back fear to say, hey, this doesn't work. Hey, I feel like this. Hey, this, I'm noticing X, Y, and Z, right? Rather than people pleasing, I'm expressing and communicating my truth. And then is the other person allowing that as well, right? And engaging in that is really where we can deepen our relationships, where we can engage with conflict that allows us to deepen trust, right? Because we can overcome, we can understand other people's boundaries and learn how to love people, the way they need to be loved, and how to ask to be loved the way we need to be loved. That's all that boundaries are, is really how we enact our love with one another. So telling your truth is so incredibly important, and really is at the heart of what boundaries are.